I'm ready to go when you are.
Okay.
Our call to worship this morning is from the Reverend Hannah Villeneuve, who writes, "Here we are again, where exactly we might not be sure, and why exactly we might not agree. So let me state what I know with as much certainty as I can muster. We are not here because life is wonderful. We are here because life is exhilarating, heartbreaking, disorienting, soul-shaking. We are not here because these people are easy. We are here because we are most human, most humane when we have each other, to hold up the mirror and show us the entirety of our possibility. We are not here because we have answers. We are here because we are, each of us, lost and found all at once, seeking grace and showing it, finding our way home together. We are not here because we are unafraid. We are here because we have found that there are fears worth facing, risks worth taking, and that we'd rather not face them. That is, we'd rather not face life alone. So come, beloveds, and let us worship. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning. My name is the Reverend Oscar Sinclair. Each week we gather as a shared community. And in the 18 months now since the coronavirus began, we have gathered in different ways at different times. Sometimes on Zoom, sometimes in person, now and over the last month or so, in this live-streamed setting, where there are 7 of us here running the service, and the rest of the congregation gathered on YouTube. I wish you could look out and see what I'm looking at, because Christine Davis, our worship associate this morning, came in before we started and taped congregants' names to the chair. So I see Kathy and Kurt right here in the front row. So welcome, Kathy and Kurt. But Sunday morning, in whatever way that we gather, whether you are watching on YouTube or here in the room, or exist not in the actual service, but just as a optimistic note on the back of a chair, we aspire to be a loving community here, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. And that remains true, whether we are in person, online, or together in some way of being that we cannot yet imagine. There is work to be done, beloveds. Let's be about it.
Our Chalice Lighting is by Erica Hewitt. With full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. We light this chalice, symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be. Our opening hymn is Gather the Spirit.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Our story today is called The Stars Just Up the Street by Sue Solstice. That was a slip. Solstice. Thinking astrologically today. Mabel loved the stars. She could count 5 from her window when it wasn't cloudy, and 19 from her backyard in a narrow patch of sky. Her grandfather loved to tell stories, and Mabel listened hardest to the parts about the night sky on the prairie where he grew up. Once meteors fell there like rain. Sometimes the full moon rose so big he said it looked like another planet. And every night there were thousands of stars. Thousands? Well, Mabel knew something was wrong. She climbed the tallest tree out back. Even from up here, she called down to Grandpa, I only count 37. Well, Grandpa said, I think we can see more stars on the hill, just up the street. The sky is wide there, and I bet it's darker. They took a walk. The road wound up and up. At the top, Mabel started to count. Only 103, she said at last. And then she noticed all the lit up windows and porches. Maybe people could turn off their lights, she said. Maybe they could, Grandpa said. Let's ask them. She took her grandpa's hand. They went door to door. It was a bit hard to explain, and a few people refused. I might bump into a wall. I don't want to step on my cat. I'd like to help out, but how can I make dinner in the dark? Come outside with us, Mabel suggested, just for a bit. And in the end, many of them did just that. It's been a long time since I went stargazing, someone said. Look, the Big Dipper, someone else shouted. You can see more stars, Mabel said, and she began to count. At 214, she suddenly stopped. The glow from a nearby streetlight blocked part of the sky. Grandpa, who can switch that off? She asked. Well, the town controls the streetlights, Grandpa said. The next day, Grandpa and Mabel visited the mayor at town hall. The mayor told them, no. We keep safe, well-lit streets in this town, she said. Arg, said Mabel as they left the town hall. I guess I can look at the stars from the tree. Maybe 37 isn't so bad. But on the way home, they ran into a mail carrier and told him about their meeting with the mayor. He said, maybe I'll have a word or two with the mayor also. Then Mabel decided to tell everyone they saw. They talked to a lady walking her dog, a family on their way to the library, and a crowd of speedy bicycle riders stopped at a traffic light. Mabel got really good at getting to the point. You won't believe how many more stars we would see, she said. All through that day, the mayor received phone calls, emails, and even a few in-person visits. But her answer was always, no. What about burglars, she said. Dark streets don't increase crime, said a police officer. What about people falling on dark paths, the mayor went on. Hand out flashlights, suggested a Parks and Rec officer. There are town regulations, the mayor exclaimed. Meanwhile, back at home, Mabel thought about how she might convince the mayor. Night had already fallen when the mayor opened Mabel's email. When was the last time you saw thousands of stars? The mayor closed her eyes. Long ago, lying on a striped blanket under the darkest of summer skies, she had tried to count them all. The mayor opened her eyes. Okay, she typed, let's try it. On the next new moon, people arrived on the hill with dogs and blankets and snacks. They saw bright stars and dim stars and Venus and Mars, white stars, golden stars, and stars of the hottest blue. Now this is what I call stargazing, Grandpa said. How many are up there, Mabel? But Mabel was looking around instead. There was quite a crowd. And a little down the way, the mayor sat on a striped blanket, gazing up at the sky also. I haven't even started to count, Mabel told Grandpa. A tradition began that night. People gathered every new moon, bringing telescopes, binoculars, egg salad sandwiches, and strawberry pie. Each time the sky was a little darker, the lights went out and spread from street to street. Everyone saw meteor showers and the Milky Way, planets and constellations and satellites. Mabel wondered if she would ever count them all, those stars just up the street. There were definitely thousands. And that is the end of our story.
Each week, as part of our service, we take up an offering to support the work of this church and our partners in the broader community. And next Sunday, we will mark the beginning of our pledge drive. So we will talk a lot more about that. So for now, let me just say that this congregation depends on its membership in so many ways, in volunteer hours, in talents, and in donations, whether on Sunday morning or via pledge. For today, as Bill plays this next Chopin piece, you're invited to give by texting 73256 and the amount you wish to give. Let's try that again. You text UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. Thank you for your generosity.
My name is Christine Davis, and I'm a worship associate for this church and responsible for the shenanigans that Oscar mentioned earlier. And it is fun to look out at some of the names of people I miss seeing here, maybe especially at this point in the service. One central part of our service each week is the time we join together in community to mark the moments of our lives. We share with one another our joys, our sorrows, the events that mark the steps along our way. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for each of us, remembered by each of us. We share those threads, and they are woven together with those of others in the community. Our joys are shared and magnified. We are comforted in our sorrows. As Julie sings our next hymn, I invite you to type into the chat your name or the name of another that you wish to be remembered, either in joy or in sorrow, and I'll speak the names of Alex and Nicholas and my dad.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Speak for me, speak for me, speak for me, oh my soul. Speak for me, speak for me, speak for me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
Because she wanted everyone to feel included in her prayer, Nancy Shaffer writes. She said right at the beginning several names for the holy. Spirit, she said, Holy One, Mystery, God. But then, thinking these weren't enough ways of addressing that which cannot fully be addressed, she added particularities, saying Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Ancient Holy One, mystery we will never, not ever, fully know, gracious God, and also Spirit of this earth, God of Sarah, Gaia, Thou. And then, tongue loosened, she fell to naming superlatives as well, most creative one, greatest source, closest hope, even though superlatives for the sacred seemed to her probably redundant. But then she couldn't stop. One who made the stars, she said, although she knew technically a number of those present didn't believe the stars had been made by anyone or anything, but just luckily happened. One who is an entire ocean of compassion, she said, and no one laughed. That which has been present since the beginning, she said, and the room was silent. Then, although she hadn't imagined it this way, others began to offer names. Peace, said one. One my mother knew, said another. Ancestor, said a third. Wind, rain, breath, said one at the back. Refuge, that which holds all. A child said water. Someone said Kuan Yin. Then womb, witness, great kindness, great eagle, eternal stillness, And then there wasn't any need to say the things she thought would be important to say. And everyone sat hushed. Until someone said amen.
Another reading by Nancy Shaffer, left. When those expelled from a land set out carrying children and frail ones and whatever other parts of their lives their backs or heads or fingers can hold, how do they walk upright not 10 meters, but whole kilometers and then whole days? How do they walk past wanting, past hope? Do they speak to their bodies, tell their arms, you must carry this, not drop this, not put this down? Tell their feet, you must keep stepping, because I can't do this without you. Tell their necks, you must stay tall, no matter the weight above, below, behind. Do they implore each cell to help each other one? Because later, however much longer later is, hips must bend or sit or fold to lie and then stand up again. And elbows flex, knees lift. The pace and weight of journey must not lock into bone, not pull muscle from its lodging. No after can come except through this now. This is why, finally, a small bundle is left here by a tree, another, hours later, here by a rock. The feet said they might continue if the hands and back let go these things. The hands and back said yes, that everything still living might yet live.
I have lost track of how many times I've compared this last year and a half to stories of exile. I know it's happened more than a few times in sermons, but I don't think we've used that Nancy Shaffer poem, Left, yet. We've been carrying a lot for a long time. And what does it mean, she asks, to lay down some of our burdens? Is it possible to leave a small bundle of cares by the rocks, or to let go of some of the responsibilities that we carry? Each summer, the Congregational Board of Trustees and I gather for an annual retreat, usually in August. It's a time to step back from the month-to-month management of the congregation and ask, where are we? How did we get here? And critically, where might we go next? Each of these retreats for the last 3 or 4 years has involved a single question. What are the 3 big ideas that we want to organize our work around in the coming year? These priorities tend to define a lot of the year. Last year, they were a call to manage our transition back into the building well, to leverage technology to connect our congregation, and bring our congregational focus towards the role of race and racism in our congregation and in the broader community. So over the last year, we've developed plans to re-enter and, yes, temporarily step away from our building. We've invested in this live streaming equipment that allows us to connect well, even remotely. And dozens of our members have participated in beloved conversations, bringing conversations about dismantling white supremacy to every part of this congregation. That was last year. Priorities are as much about what we don't do as what it is we do. What we put down in Nancy Shaffer's writing, maybe for a few years, maybe for good, so that we can continue on with focus and determination on the things that we do decide to focus on. And this involves some trade-offs. 2021 was supposed to be the year that we hired a ministerial intern. And a year ago, caught up in the pandemic and facing uncertainty about the year to come, we decided to hold off on that deeply held priority until we could do it right. So in this coming church year, what are our priorities in this moment? From September of 2021 through May of 2022. The first priority that the board set is simple: to deepen connections and increase engagement within our church community, including our children, youth, and young adults. We have been through a lot in a year and a half. It's now 18 months to the week since we first announced that we were closing our building in response to this pandemic. And in that time, we've had some really important, meaningful ways of connecting, from UU Connect groups that began right away, to a bike ride across Lincoln, to an online auction. We have done our best to recognize that the church is made up of a people, not a building. And we know that that's flagging right now. Nobody on the board or the staff is unable to see numbers. We read our emails. We know that the membership of this church is tired, less engaged with the church than they were a year ago, and frustrated where we still are in this pandemic. We get it, because the same goes for us. Here's a practical way to see this. About a month ago, we started to put out a call for folks to send in stories about times they felt connected to this church, one of the ways that we're getting ready for our stewardship campaign next month. And that call started in the newsletter and has been in 2 e-blasts, a daily video, and in the worship service last Sunday, and to date, 6 people have responded. So I have gentle chiding written here in my script, because I just refuse to believe that there are only 6 of you who have any meaningful memories of this congregation. And yes, I know communication is hard in churches and harder in the midst of a pandemic, but this is only one of any number of examples we could draw from. And it's because of examples like that, then, that the board set this as our first overriding priority in the coming year. How do we deepen connections in the church community? Laying aside the limitations of the pandemic, what keeps us tied to this community? What is meaningful about gathering with each other, whether in person or remotely? How do we come together to process what we've been through, are going through, and going to go through next? This might look like reinvigorating small group ministry, open circles, or UU Connects, or highlighting voices from the congregation in daily updates. It may simply be looking into the cameras in a live stream and encouraging each of you to call each other and say, hey, I've missed you. How are you holding up? This is the most basic function of churches every year, to provide a community of collective relationship and meaning making. So this year, we're going to give ourselves permission to lean into that task.
Fiona Heath writes about dandelion kindness. Many of us are living with some level of fear and stress and frustration and anxiety. These are difficult times. A fragile democracy, systemic racism, pandemics, the climate crisis, all of which impact our health, our work, and our lives. Most of us are in some way struggling to survive. In the hard times, kindness between people is needed and necessary. As people of the Chalice, kindness is the lived expression of the principles we hold dear. Being kind to ourselves affirms our own value, even when others would deny it. Acts of kindness toward others show that they have value and worth outside of any moment or relationship. Kindness also roots us in the seventh principle, the understanding of our interdependence. We are deeply connected to all other life on Earth. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us the intricate weaving of human bonds, that we are all in this together. I think of this kindness, the kindness that requires us to dig deep and unearth our resiliency, she writes, as dandelion kindness. If you have seen a patch of grass in spring, you know that dandelions are tenacious. Mow them down, and they spring right back up. Their roots go down, down deep. You can rip out the stems and tear off the leaves, and with time, the dandelion will once more bloom a cheerful yellow. Dandelion kindness. Kindness that wells up in the face of all challenges is what we need. We get torn down, and we grow back up. We face our struggles, and we help each other survive. Dandelion kindness does not mean we are going to be kind all the time in every moment. No perfect people here. It means we return again and again to kindness as our baseline.
So we ground ourselves in connection and in love. But to what end? Fiona Heath reminds us that our faith's understanding of community is not simply internal. We are not a part of the interconnected web of all of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. Rather, we are part of a community, an ecosystem, and a history beyond the bounds of our own community. This is old universalist theology. Over a century ago, Clarence Skinner crystallized this theological turn for universalists. Rather than simply focusing on what happens after death, his conception of universalism required our churches to work to build a better world. Here's how he put it, and apologies for the gendered language of his time. This was published in 1915. The old ideas of a God who created a spiritual aristocracy, who maintained partiality, whose sympathies were not as wide as the whole of humanity, are patently inadequate to meet these new needs. A democratic people demand a democratic God, a robust deity who likes the universe, who hungers for fellowship, who is in and of and for the whole of life. The universalist idea of God is that of a universal, impartial, immanent spirit whose nature is love. It is the largest thought the world has ever known. It is the most revolutionary doctrine ever proclaimed, and it is the most expansive hope ever dreamed. Parenthetically, Clarence Skinner did not suffer from understatement. This is the God of the modern man and the God who is in modern man. There is no tribal deity of ancient divisive civilization. There is no God of the nation or of a chosen people, but the democratic creator of the solid, indivisible world, of the rich and poor, black and white, good and bad, strong and weak, Jew and Gentile, bond and free. So the board's second commitment for the year focuses on that same core commitment, but in more contemporary language than Clarence Skinner, calling us to continue our engagement with the world through our commitments to dismantle racism, to address the effects of climate change, and to recertify our LGBTQIA+ welcoming congregation status. So we'll take these one at a time. Since 2017, at least, the Unitarian Universalist Association has been grappling with its legacy of race and white supremacy, both in our institutions and in the broader culture. This work has been ongoing since the formation of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America back in the 18th century, but came sharply into focus with the rise of the movement for Black lives. Over the last few years, we've explored how deeply our experience and systems are shaped by race, and began the hard work of changing our systems and ourselves away from patterns of oppression. Last year, almost 50 of our members from this congregation participated in the first session of Beloved Conversations, an offering of Meadville Lombard Theological School. The first year of that program focused on our internal work. How are we as individuals affected by race? What might we do about it? This year's program, which we are signing up for as well, is titled Among. And rather than individuals, we are participating as a congregation, looking at how our congregational system is shaped by systems of oppression, and eventually working to dismantle those systems in this institution. And then the second part of this goal is to work to mitigate the effects of climate change. This was a summer of big, unavoidable climate catastrophes. From fires out west and in Turkey, to a hurricane that devastated swaths of Louisiana before unexpectedly traveling north and hitting New York City with the worst storm that city has seen since Sandy. In an email exchange this week, our member Becky Sate put it this way: "We don't have much time to turn the ship in the right direction. We have to change our lifestyles so that all people can live with a decent social foundation of basic needs, and so that we are not overstepping what the planet can provide to us. We also have to advocate for our government at all levels to take bold moves so that this might just be possible." One of the fundamental challenges of climate change and pandemics is that they are fundamentally a problem of collective action. It is hard at times to see how our actions as individuals or as the Unitarian Church of Lincoln affect the latest IPCC report. And indeed, no amount of recycling solar panels on our roof or water conservation on the part of this church alone is going to get us globally from 2.3 degrees Celsius to 1.5. So it can be hard to see, but it is no less real. It is a collective problem, but one whose effects begin to fall in this generation. But the true catastrophes are for the next one. The most recent IEA report suggests that we must reach net zero emissions by 2050. That is an incredibly short amount of time. Ailish will be 33 years old. We simply cannot wait for her generation to solve it for us. but we live in a democracy. And there are local, state, and national leaders who do affect policy, who must hear our voices. Here in Lincoln, the city and members of this congregation have been working to put together a plan for the coming years. Lincoln's comprehensive plan envisions a community that is livable, equitable, thriving, resilient, and innovative. The way that happens is through involvement of folks in the community, through the involvement of all of us. And then the third piece of this goal is continuing our work to broaden our welcome to all. For much of the last year, the LGBTQIA Welcoming Committee has been working to renew our status as a welcoming congregation at the UUA. This involves multiple areas of church life, from religious education to worship, to what holidays we mark, and how we partner with other organizations in the community. And we're going to keep at that work, which we laid out in more detail in a sermon 6 months ago. In the interest of time, I'll try to get a link up in the chat box to that sermon rather than go through each of the 5 discrete areas of that renewal. But I will simply say that the most important reason that we do this is this name tag right here in the front row that is "person new to me." How do we make sure that everybody in this room, from the names on the back of name tags who have been here for 30 or 40 years, to the folks who have been here for 2 years, to the folks who have walked in for the very first time, all feel welcome and a part of this community? That is the fundamental question that we can go on about for some time. That 3-part goal sounds like a lot. Indeed, it is. But fundamentally, this goal that the board set for this community is an acknowledgement of what we already know to be true. That the goals of our faith are not contained within our community. Skinner described universalism as the largest thought the world has ever known, the most revolutionary doctrine ever proclaimed, and the most expansive hope ever dreamed. Somewhat more prosaically, a 19th century theologian observed that universalists have laid claim to the largest concept in theology. Hopefully they live up to it. May we indeed.
Peter Raible writes, and together, we build on foundations we did not lay. We warm ourselves by fires we did not light. We sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. We profit from persons we did not know. This is as it should be. Together, we are more than any one person could be. Together, we can build across generations. Together, we can renew our hope and faith in the life that is yet to unfold. Together, we can heed the call to a ministry of care and justice. We are ever bound in community. May it always be so.
The third and last goal that the board set in August does not obviously lend itself to preaching. Develop a timeline and funding plan for our building and grounds maintenance and replacement needs. Over the last few years since the renovation, we've been kicking around this idea that we really do need to plan for long-term maintenance. How often do we need to repair the roof? Plan to replace carpet or paint? What is the lifespan of these chairs in the sanctuary? And how do we fit all that medium-term stuff into the budget? Not obviously sermon fodder, except for this. Pete Raible reminds us that we warm ourselves by fires we did not light, on foundations we did not lay. Churches are generational projects. The first of the three goals draws out children and youth as the most important constituency we have. Just as we have inherited this institution from those who have gone before us, we will hand it off to generations yet to be born. And it's because of that we have a responsibility to plan in short, medium, and long terms. Because of that, occasionally there is a board goal about long-term maintenance. Stacy and I can reasonably plan our finances, including retirement in a window that ends sometime probably in the 21st century. If we have something to pass on to the next generation at the end, that's great. But that's not the goal. It is the goal for a church, for this church. Together we build across generations. And that can be hard to remember in the midst of years like this, where a pandemic, inequality, climate change, and civil unrest have us pulling out yeats in worship planning. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Maybe that's true. But the generations that have come before us in this community have had their yeats moments too. Pete Raible was a minister in 1968. And in the midst of this, they built the foundation of the community that we are a part of now. And so that's our responsibility as well, so that our children's children can sit in the shade of trees they did not plant. That is a lovely sentiment, and day to day that looks like building out a maintenance budget for the building. So 3 big goals: deepen connection, engage with the community, work to sustain this church. Those are the things that we will carry with us this year, and we will come back to them each more than once in the coming year. But for now, how will you pick them up? And what are the next steps of your journey? Amen. Our closing hymn is "Love Will Guide Us."
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we are together again. Be at peace, beloveds, and amen. Okay.